Me properly?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, so last day we were talking about JWT authentication, and we had one token being returned from the login request. So today we will be continuing on that, and we were also going to discuss some of these claims, and we'll see how these claims work. Okay. And the only claim we had added till now is this expires in, which for now says 1 minute. So let's see what happens if the token expires, and then we'll add other claims also. Okay. Token. Okay. So before that, now suppose the work we'll create one endpoint which is going to return the workshops to us. Okay. And I want only the authenticated users to make a request to that endpoint. So if I open the existing application, which should come up here. Okay, so this is the screen, and on the UI side, we have added authentication that only the logged in user can see this screen. Now I want to implement this on the API level also, because anything which is on the UI side can be changed, right? Anyone who is aware of how to change JavaScript can do that. So I want to add authentication to the API level. Okay. All right, so let's create a controller first of all for the workshops. Okay, export. Right, so on this router, I want to create a get method, which I am saying कि जब इस endpoint पे request आएगी, then I want to execute this function, which is going to take a request, a response. We can put the next argument here, but we are not going to use it, so I'll not use this one for now. Okay, so inside this, we need to first of all create the workshops in the database. But for now, I can use the mock data which we already have, which was in the UI application. Assets. So for these workshops, we won't be creating entire UI. I'll be telling you a quick way to do this. That is, anyone who knows what a CMS is. Anyone has an experience on that?
CMS, right? CMS is our content management system, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's what you're asking.
Yes, yes. So any examples of CMS which you have worked on? Yeah, like which you have seen or used somewhere?
Uh, uh, there are some which are part of the PHP framework which people use. I think WordPress has some functionality like that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So there are two type of CMS. The one we are going to talk about are called headless CMS, and the one like WordPress, that is a complete CMS with the UI and the API also. Okay. So basically, why we are going to use the CMS is we'll be having a dashboard, an admin dashboard where we will be creating all these workshops. We don't have to code anything for this. We just need to host a service, and on that we can create some data structures which will support the representation of a workshop, and then we'll have a UI also from where we can input that, and at the end we'll have an API exposed from that tool which we can utilize in our application. So we'll be talking about this when we move this static data into a CMS. But for now, just a heads up that we are not going to write screens for the admin panel. We are going to use an existing CMS. Okay.
Okay.
And that thing is also very helpful if we want to create a configuration layer, like per client configurations or something dynamic which you want to take away from the code, because anything you write inside code is hard coded, right? There are situations where you want to put something on a configuration layer that you can change independent of the code, so that you don't have to redeploy the code if you change those things. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the endpoint we are going to work on, and I want to create a folder here. Say inside V1, I'll create helpers, and in the helpers, I'm going to create a guard that is auth guard. This is just a name. Basically, this is going to be a function. Export. So this guy is going to take request, response, and next as its arguments. This is a middleware basically. Request, next function. Okay. Okay, what is this guy saying? Cannot find name. Const. Okay. Ah, all right. So inside this function, what I am going to do is I am assuming that on the request there is going to be a header called authorization, and that is going to contain the token. Okay. So first of all, I'll extract that request dot headers dot uh, do we have a method get here? No. There is also a method on the request which we can use. Authorization. So on authorization header, I'm going to pass a string something like bearer space and then the token. Okay. Okay. So here, what I have done is I have checked if the authorization header is not present. I have converted it to an empty string so that the further the code does not break. Dot split, split with the space. Okay. Dot. And when I split it with a space, I again want to check this. This is going to be an array. Okay, I think that should be fine. Split it with this. Okay, so what pop is going to do is it removes the last element. So basically what I'm doing with this string is I am first of all getting this entire string when I say request.get authorization. So I get this entire string in the code. And then if there was nothing inside this authorization header, I am replacing it with an empty string. And then whatever I have here, I'm splitting it with the space from this character empty space. So it will convert it to an array of strings where first part will have bearer and the second part will have the token. And if it was an empty string, then it will convert into an array with just one element, which is going to be an empty string. Okay, and then I am taking whatever the last element is using this pop function. So it is going to give me this token, and now this token can be an empty string. So suppose the situation I am considering here is if I say empty string dot split with a space and then pop. So I'm going to get an empty string. Okay, either I'll get an empty string or I'll get a token. So if I use this guy and here I do this, so in this case I am getting the token. So I can either get an empty string or the token. Okay, so now I'll check if I have the token. If not token, that means the token is a falsy value. Then I want to simply throw the user outside. Okay, response dot status. I want to say 401 dot json. What's the issue here? The expression is not callable. Ah, just a second. Ah, okay. So the issue here is this response is not getting imported from here. Response dot status. Now it says it's a function, and I want to say 401 and then JSON. Whatever I can put here, or I can say token not fast. Okay. So if the token is not available, then I am sending this error, and then I'll put a return statement here. Okay, so that I exit from this function. Right. So if the token exists, then I am going to import the JWT library, the verify function from it. JSON web token verify. Now what I'll do here is I'll call the verify function. So this verify takes first argument as the token. So we have that token. The second argument is the secret key. So I'll use process dot env dot secret. So this is the same secret we created in our environment file. Okay, and then there's a third argument which we can pass. So these are other configurations which we can use here for validation. So like suppose audience, if I want to check the audience, issuer, JWT ID, nuance, subject. These are the claims which we can set on the token. And then if we want to verify that if this is available inside the token, then we can pass these. But for now, we do not require them. Okay, we'll talk about these. Okay, so this guy is going to return a string. Okay, no. Okay, I think it takes a callback. Yeah, it takes a callback. Okay, so decoded token, it is going to give me a decoded token here. No, the first argument is errors. Right. Yeah. Okay. So this is what is it's going to give me. And remember in Node.js, whenever you have a callback, there is a convention that the first argument is always going to be an error object, if there is any. Otherwise, it will be null. So you have to have a placeholder for that in case there's an error and you want to check that. So if there is an error, I want to do this, that the token basically is invalid at this point. That is why the error has occurred. And I simply want to pass that error to the user. Okay. And then again, I want to say return. Else, okay, so maybe this return is not required because I have written the else part. So otherwise, this decoded token is now available to us. Okay. So in this case, what I am going to do is I am going to set the request dot user property to be decoded token. Okay. All right. So I have put the decoded token in the request object, and then I'm going to call the next middleware in chain. And I'll pass null here. Okay. So this is the auth guard. What this auth guard does is it takes the token from the request headers, and if the token is valid based on this secret, then it allows the request to go to the next middleware in chain. Otherwise, this status is sent from here. Okay, this error is sent from here. So let's see if it works. Let's try the postman. Here it is. So till now we have not added this auth guard to the application. Okay. So first of all, I'll show how this workshops endpoint work. We still have to configure it in the controllers. Here in the controllers, we'll use this. All right. So this should now work. That was a GET request. Okay. So at this point, I am getting the data from the workshops. Okay. But see, I'm not sending the authorization header in the request. Okay. So now let's add that authentication or authorization to this controller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the auth guard and pass it as a middleware. Okay. So basically what happens is when this route is matched, it calls this middleware. And if that middleware's the responsibility of this middleware now is to either send out the response or call the next function in order to invoke this next middleware. Okay. So this means on these things, these functions, you can have multiple middlewares which can work synchronously. So once the first one is finished, then the control goes to the next second one, and then if there is a third one, then I have to call the next from inside here. Okay. Does it make sense till here? Yes, sir. Okay. So now since we have added that authorization, so at this point, if I send a request, so I get an error which says token not provided. Okay, and that is true because we are not sending that token now, right? So let me duplicate this and let's log into the system and get the token from that. Users slash login. This has to be a post request, and I'm going to send these credentials admin. I'll remove these for now. Okay. Okay. So I have got this token in this case, and this is valid for just a minute. Okay. So I'll quickly add authorization header here. Authorization bearer. Then I'll paste this guy. And now if I send this request, I'm getting that data back. Okay. But just after a minute, this token is going to expire. Okay. So we have to either wait for a minute or we'll continue for now, but we'll come back in a minute and test it. Okay. So this is one thing that we have added an authentication guard to the application, and this is that guard. It's not doing much. It just checks for some basics, and then it just either sends out the response as an error, or otherwise it calls the next middleware in the chain. Okay, which is in case of workshops is this middleware. Okay, any doubts still here? Anyone?
नो सर, बस जो सीक्वेंस है मिडल वेयर्स का वो यहीं पे डिफाइन होगा ना, राउटर डॉट गेट के बाद
हाँ,
नेक्स्ट में
जिस
चलते
सीक्वेंस
हैं।
में आप मिडलवेयर्स को डिक्लेयर करते हो ना, दैट इज द सीक्वेंस ऑफ एग्जीक्यूशन। उसी सीक्वेंस में वो एग्जीक्यूट होंगे। सो बेसिकली बिहाइंड द सीन्स दे आर कलेक्टिंग दीज इनटू एन एरे, और एक एक एलिमेंट करके वो कॉल करते जा रहे हैं। एंड इफ एट सम पॉइंट यू डू नॉट कॉल द नेक्स्ट फंक्शन फ्रॉम वन ऑफ द मिडलवेयर्स एंड यू डू नॉट सेंड अ रिस्पॉन्स ईदर, द रिक्वेस्ट इज गोइंग टू हैंग देयर, इट इज नॉट गोइंग टू गेट सेंट आउट टू द यूजर। सो दिस मीन्स अगर मैं ये नेक्स्ट नहीं लिखता हूँ तो कभी भी रिस्पॉन्स नहीं मिलेगा मुझे।
हाँ,
ठीक है। So I think a minute has passed. Let's try. Okay. So now it is saying that JWT has expired. Okay. Since we had set the expiry of 1 minute and we are verifying that token here, so it checks for those claims. Okay. And now we are basically into this part, and there was an error, and I have sent that error to the user, and it says token has expired. You cannot access the resource now. Are we good till here?
यस सर।
All right. So for the server side guys, like who are working on the APIs, we can implement multiple strategies here. One strategy is along with the access token, you can also provide a refresh token, which can be used to refresh the token once the token is expired. So now suppose you have a token expiry of say 5 minutes, okay, and someone steals your token, and now that guy can access the resources for 5 minutes until the expiry of the token. But on every request we are not sending that refresh token, so that is something hidden inside the UI. Okay. And as soon as the token gets expired, we take that refresh token and then make a request to get a new token. Okay. We have to save that refresh token in the database somewhere so that we can check if the token is valid or not. And based on that refresh token, we again generate a new refresh token and an access token, or otherwise just the access token. We do not change the refresh token. Means there are multiple strategies which you can implement there. But this is something which generally applications do. There is a refresh flow with which you refresh your token. Okay, so I just want to put some light on other claims. Now suppose there is an application where the issuers of the token can be multiple. Okay, so suppose one issuer is ABC and other issuer can be some DEF. Okay, so for the same secret, you are basically having two different authorization servers which can issue the token to you. Okay, in such scenarios, currently even if I put this issuer here, I am not checking that issuer inside the auth guard. Okay, that is not going to be checked by default. If I want to do that, so I have to pass this configuration object, and here I'll have the issuer. So if I see the description of this thing, so it is saying you can put a string or an array of strings for all the issuers which you want to check against. Okay, and the same thing is for audience, for JWT ID, nuance, subject, all these things you can pass here, so that while verifying the token, this function checks for those also. So by default, it does not check the issuer. But if I specify the issuer to be ABC, then it will be valid. If suppose I say DEF here and the issuer is actually ABC, it should fail. Okay, let's try that. So while creating the token, I am using ABC. So I'll get this token. Okay, and here in the authorization section, okay, So it says JWT issuer invalid, expected DEF, but the issuer is ABC. Okay. So these are certain claims which you can use in order to make your application bit more secure. We'll for now we'll only be using actually we'll not be using the expiry also, because I don't want to at this point talk about that refresh stuff. So I'll remove this section also. Okay, but was it clear? Do we understand what I am talking about?
सर इश्यूअर वाला कोई और सिंपल एग्जांपल से बताइए, जैसे हम
um,
थोड़ी और सिंपल लैंग्वेज में कि मल्टीपल इश्यूअर्स कैसे हो सकते हैं.
ठीक है, तो अभी मान लो कि तुम्हारी एप्लीकेशन ना 4 जगह से टोकन ले सकती है। एक सपोजिंगली, मतलब एक हाइपोथेटिकल एग्जांपल है, मान लो गूगल से तुम टोकन ले सकते हो, एक्सेस टोकन। दूसरा टोकन तुम्हारी अपनी एप्लीकेशन सर्वर देती है, और तीसरा टोकन मान लो तुम्हें ट्विटर से मिलता है, और सभी तुम्हें JWT टोकन दे रहे हैं।
ओके.
ठीक है, एंड यू वांट टू चेक कि इशूअर जो है इन तीनों में से ही कोई एक होना चाहिए। ठीक है, दिस इज नॉट अ कंक्रीट एग्जांपल, इट्स नॉट द वे इट वर्क्स इन रियल लाइफ, बट जस्ट टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस कि इशूअर का सिग्निफिकेंस क्या है। दिस इज द सिग्निफिकेंस, इन ऑर्डर फॉर दिस टू हैपन ऑल ऑफ देम हैव टू बी यूजिंग द सेम सीक्रेट की, विच इज नॉट जनरली द केस।
ओके.
ठीक है,
तो मींस कि डिफरेंट इश्यूअर्स के पास सेम सीक्रेट की होनी चाहिए.
हाँ, वो एक्चुअली आपकी एप्लीकेशन का ही पार्ट होंगे। मतलब मान लो कुछ अलग अलग सर्वर्स हैं तुम्हारी, एक बहुत बड़ा सिस्टम है जिसमें माइक्रो सर्विसेज हैं और 2-3 तरह के ऑथेंटिकेशन ऑथराइजेशन सर्वर्स हैं, जो अलग अलग फ्लोज पे काम करते हैं। मान लो एक सोप यूआई पे काम करता है, एक रेस्ट पे काम करता है, एक कुछ XML बेस्ड कुछ करता है, कुछ अलग तरह का, और वो सभी तुम्हें देते JWT टोकन ही है। तो उन सभी का इशूअर आईडी जो होगा वो अलग अलग होगा, and there is then one application which can take token from any of those and then respond to some resource, मतलब किसी किसी एक रिसोर्स पे तुम्हें कुछ डेटा दे सकती हो। in that kind of server you will use this issuer। ठीक है, okay, so shall we move on?
श्योर.
All right, so till this point what we have done is we have added this auth guard here, and then it is protecting this route. Anyone who is not authorized to access this will मतलब यहाँ पे अभी ना हम रोल चेक नहीं कर रहे हैं। फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल वी आर ओनली चेकिंग इफ द टोकन इज वैलिड, एंड इफ द टोकन इज वैलिड दैट मीन्स द यूजर इज ऑथेंटिकेटेड। अभी ऑथराइजेशन चेक नहीं करी है हमने, दैट इज व्हाई आई एम कॉलिंग दिस गाय एज ऑथ गार्ड, एंड ऑथ स्टैंड्स फॉर ऑथेंटिकेशन हियर, सॉरी, ऑथराइजेशन में भी ऑथ ही होता है। So I'll put an admin guard or a user guard, something like that. यूज़र गार्ड की मुझे लगता नहीं है ज़रूरत होगी कभी, क्योंकि इफ़ द यूज़र इज़ लॉग्ड इन एंड द मिनिमम रोल आई कैन असाइन टू अ यूज़र इज़ अ यूज़र or a client, so I won't be creating a guard for that guy. I'll simply use this auth guard for different roles. Now suppose मैं कुछ एक एंड पॉइंट ऐसा बनाना चाहता हूँ जहाँ पे वर्कशॉप क्रिएट होगी, दो आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू डू दैट बिकॉज आई विल बी यूजिंग अ CMS for that, but suppose if I want to do that and I want only the admins to access that, in that case I'll create another guard. I'll call it admin auth guard. Okay, I'll first of all take all of this, or instead of taking all of that I can do another thing. I can simply call that function. So let's write that const admin auth guard equals a function which takes request, response and next functions. So it takes these three arguments, and then I'll call. Uh, I'll have to change the implementation of this guy. Instead of calling next here, I have to return it. So I can, what I can do is I can extract this logic out to a function, and then this guard will only call that function. So let's do that. So let's say I have a function auth guard function, and this is going to return an error or a success. That's the only case. Okay. So this have to take all of these three arguments, not all of these, only request and response. Actually, only the request is required, response is not required. Okay. So it takes in a request, and then it has to either this is going to actually send me a promise. Okay, so it has to be promise of any, let's say any for now. Okay, and then what I'm going to do here is I'll extract this logic, the entire thing. First of all, I'll put it here. So from the request, I'll take the authorization header. Then I won't be sending the response from here, but I'll be returning this object from here. Okay. And if I send an object, that means an error. If I send null, that means no error. Okay. I can write any. That is fine though. Return message string is not assignable. Okay, that's fine. This has to be an async function, or there's another new promise resolve reject, and I'll put this code inside there. Okay, so that is fine. And instead of returning, I'll say resolve or reject with this. Okay. So basically, when there is an error, the promise has been rejected. That means I'll go in the catch block of the promise. Okay. Then I call this verify function, and instead of sending out this error directly, I'll call reject, and in this case, I'll pass this response resolve. What is this resolve for? Resolve decoded token. Okay, and this decoded token is of type. Let's define the type here. While creating the token, we have put this role. This is kind of a user. Okay, so let me put user there. Let's in the auth card here. It is going to give me a response of type this. The role is going to be user role. ID is going to be of type string, and name is also going to be of type string. Okay, so this as any. Okay, so this function, authGuard function, I can simply use this function here now. I'll comment all of this. I have to use authGuard. I have to pass the request to this function. Okay, and then authGuard function. Sorry. dot then I get the decoded token DECODET, which I am going to put inside the request as we were doing before, like this statement. Okay. And then I'll call the next function in line with this next call, and in case of an error I'll call the catch block, which is going to contain the error, whatever error that is. And in this case I'm going to simply use this statement. Okay, so this logic is extracted out to a function. Now that one I can reuse. Now this function can be reused inside the other auth guard also. Okay, makes sense till here? I have done no change, just extracted out the code to this helper function, which I can reuse at different places. I didn't want to rewrite this entire code. So since I have already written this, and this returns me a promise of this type, or it throws an error. Whatever error it throws, I'm going to just send that out to the user. And if it is successful, it is able to decode something, I call the next middleware. So the existing functionality should not break at this point. Okay, let's try that. So I have this token. I'm going to put this token here. Okay, and if I make a request, I should have that data. That's working. We have removed that expiry also. So it is working fine because we are using this auth guard. We have just wrapped the internal functionality to this function. So now we are going to use this function in the admin auth guard also. So let me import it. So I have taken this auth guard function. Okay, so here I am going to pass the request to this function, and in the then block, I now want to not only add the user to the request, I also want to check the role of the user. If the user is not authorized for certain endpoints, I won't allow the user. Okay, and here since I have added that type information, so it is telling me that the role ID and name properties are available on this particular guy. Okay. So something seems to be missing there. Ah, no, sorry, I'm at the wrong place. Here, user role. Okay, right. So now I just want to check if decoded dot role equals user role, which is going to come from our library stream slash domain. No, where was that defined? String domain here. User role dot admin. So this is complaining for the codes actually. Okay, I don't know why it is complaining. So decoded, I am checking the role to be admin. If that is admin, then I call the next middleware with no error. Otherwise, in the else block, I want to use the response dot status 401 dot json, and I want to send a message that you are unauthorized. Okay. Uh, okay. Unauthorized, and I also have to handle the catch block. Okay. And in the catch block also, I'm simply going to respond the user with the error which I have received. Okay. So till this point, any doubts? Anyone?
No, sir.
Okay. So now this auth guard is only going to work for admins. If the user is in admin role, then only the user is allowed. Otherwise, it is not. Okay. And that entire functionality for checking the authentication is extracted out into this function. So this function is going to give me the token as a decoded object only if the token is valid. And then the next functionality which I wanted to check is the user has to be authenticated and should be in the role of admin, then only the user is allowed, otherwise the user is not allowed. Okay. And if the token is not valid, then also I'm sending this 401. Okay, makes sense. So let's create another endpoint here. So I'll call it router dot post. Okay. So right now this method is not going to do much. I'm simply going to return response hello from here. Response.json. Okay. All right. So let's make a post request. So currently that is not taking any authorization header, so I should get that response back. So in the data, I'm getting this string hello. Now I want to send that token, and let's change the code also. Admin auth card. So this was the name. I have to import this guy. Did I export it? I didn't export that. Okay, so now that is exported and this error is also gone now. Okay, so at this point, if I make a request, I should not be allowed if the token does not have the correct role. Okay, so it says unauthorized. This is the first thing I wanted to demo here. So we have implemented two kind of means we have implemented authentication also and authorization also. Okay, so let's create a user who has a role of admin. So for that, I am simply going to go into the database and change the role for now. And the role user user ts. Yeah, the value for an admin is 2. Okay, so if I put 2 in the database, I should be allowed for that user. So I'll simply go ahead and change the object there. The database we are working on is which one?
Training.
Training. Okay. So this one I am going to edit and I'll change the role of this guy to be 2. Update, and I'll again log in, and this time when I log in, I'll get the role as admin. Let's first check that if that is true or not. I'll go here in the console. I'll use that function atob, paste this string here. Something is wrong. atob failed to execute on a string to be decoded is not correctly encoded. I think I didn't copy it correctly. Let's do this on JWT site. Okay. So we are getting this role as 2. That's fine. This is what we wanted. So let's copy this string, and just now we saw that we were getting unauthorized क्योंकि this endpoint is not allowed for a non-admin. Okay. Now this token has a role of 2 or admin. So now I'm getting back that string. So this is working fine. And if I do not pass this token, so the exact same functionality which is implemented in the authentication guard, that is still working. Okay. If I change it to something, suppose instead of this character I use something else, so it is saying that the token is invalid. So all that existing functionality is still there. The only thing which we have implemented new is the role check. Okay, we are just checking the role of the user. If it is admin, then only we are allowing it. Otherwise, we are throwing back the error. Okay. Any questions?
यहाँ पे सर हम अनऑथराइज्ड यूजर को हैंडल कैसे कर रहे हैं? जैसे एडमिन नहीं है यूजर,
हाँ.
तो उसको मैसेज हो जाता है अनऑथराइज्ड, और उसके बाद कैसे वर्क करेगी ऐप? मींस उसके बाद क्या होगा फिर?
उसके बाद रिस्पॉन्स में एरर चला जाएगा और मतलब यूआई पे कैसे बिहेव करेगा या कैसे पूछ रहे हो?
ये यूआई पे.
अच्छा, so let's start to implement that. Workshops, क्या था स्क्रीन का नाम? होम. ओके, सो यहाँ पे अभी हम इस जेसन को एक्सेस कर रहे हैं, राइट? सो लेट्स चेंज इट to use the actual endpoint which we have just created. NVIR1ENT. Okay, so API base and then a forward slash workshops. Okay, so the UI application should still work the same. So this is the application. Let's check the network tab. Okay, so at this point it is saying 401. Okay, unauthorized, because I am not passing any token from the application. So there are multiple ways we can handle this. जब भी मुझे 401 मिलेगा, that means I am unauthorized. So I have to go to the login screen and get authorized or authenticated first of all. ठीक है? This is first thing. And if you notice, inside these guards, we are all the time sending this 401. We should not be doing that, क्योंकि based on these codes which I receive from the API as a response, I am going to put show certain messages or act upon them. So अगर तो टोकन एक्सपायर हो गया, उस केस में भी मैं 401 भेज रहा हूँ अभी के लिए. ठीक है, आई शुड नॉट बी डूइंग दैट फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल. अगर टोकन एक्सपायर हो गया, देन आई शुड बी सेंडिंग आउट सम स्टेटस कोड बेस्ड ऑन विच द एप्लीकेशन नोज कि अच्छा ये टोकन एक्सपायर हो गया, मुझे रिफ्रेश करना होगा. समझ रहे हो? तो उसके लिए हम क्या करते हैं, इंटरसेप्टर लगा लेते हैं एप्लीकेशन के अंदर यूआई में, और जब भी कोई रिस्पॉन्स आता है वी चेक द स्टेटस कोड. इफ दैट इज अ गुड वन, वी पास इट टू द एप्लीकेशन. अदरवाइज वी एक्ट अपॉन दैट. ठीक है, बट अभी के लिए सिंस दिस रिक्वेस्ट इज फेलिंग, नो डेटा इज बीइंग प्रोवाइडेड टू मी, सो नथिंग इज डिस्प्लेइंग हियर. वी कैन इम्प्रूव दिस and show certain messages here, or maybe redirect to the UI login screen. So this is something we'll talk about like in tomorrow's session or the coming days, how we handle these. Okay, let me try. So here I want to use a pipe, and then I'll say catch error. If there is an error, I'm going to return off empty array, and off has to be imported. And along with this, I am also going to show a notification, or let's say I redirect the user to the login screen. Private read only router I took the wrong one, Angular router. So I'll say this dot router dot navigate. Okay. So suppose I do this, and now when the application reloads, since I'll be getting an error, so it redirects me to this login screen. Okay. Even in this case, when I log in, I'll again come to this login screen because अभी मैं header में वो token भेज ही नहीं रहा हूँ. So you see, it redirected to the workshop screen. There was an error, and then it redirected me back to this screen. So tomorrow we'll be implementing first of all an interceptor, which is going to add the token for every request we send out from the application, and then it will intercept the status codes also and act upon them.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So any questions in this section? Yes or no?
Rohit, basically, I mean, we should be checking it on each and every route, right?
Yes.
If we have to put different separate logic on the authorization of the user, right?
Yes, exactly. We can use suppose there is a controller, and inside that controller you want to do this for every endpoint, so you can use this one also. So you can say router.use and then pass auth guard. What's that? Auth guard. This one. So now I don't need this one here because that is already done. So on this router, since this is registered first of all, so whenever a request comes to this router, it passes through this section. Okay, and when it comes to this middleware is already going to check if the user is authenticated or not. Based on that, it is going to call the next middleware or send out an error response. So let's try this. अगर मैं इस पॉइंट पे एक जो गेट रिक्वेस्ट है उसके अंदर मैंने वो हटा दिया, राइट? And suppose I don't send this now. So it is saying token not provided, even though मैंने यहाँ पे कुछ नहीं लिखा हुआ, right? And if I comment this statement, save this, now it should work क्योंकि कोई भी authentication या authorization इस endpoint पे नहीं लगी हुई है. So I am seeing this data now. Okay. So this is the way I put it on the entire controller. अगर मुझे selectively लगाना है, that is also an option.
Okay. Or if we have to, secure users controller, वहाँ पे भी it has to be done similarly,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Exactly. जैसे साइन अप एक ऐसा एंड पॉइंट है जिसके ऊपर हम वो नहीं लगा सकते हैं, बाकियों के ऊपर तो शायद लगा ही सकते हैं. जैसे अपडेट करना है, प्रोफाइल इमेज चेंज करनी है, उस तरह के सब एंड पॉइंट्स पे हम ऑथेंटिकेशन लगाते हैं जनरली. Okay. So one interesting thing here is, since we are using JWT for checking the authentication and authorization of the user, we do not have to go to the database to check if the user is valid or not. That is already implied कि user valid है क्योंकि token valid है. That is because secret सिर्फ API के पास है और किसी के पास है नहीं, और token को temper कोई नहीं कर सकता. ठीक है. So that is a big win.
और इसमें like any time I mean the code hits this validation, it's getting validated, right? I mean it could be that in a session it might be getting validated like 50 times at various places.
Yes,
This
yes,
token.
that is possible. That is possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So there can be a situation where an endpoint is not requiring an authentication or authorization, but उस endpoint का कुछ एक part है that requires it. So and if the user is authenticated or authorized to do so, then we'll do something. Otherwise, we'll skip that section. So we can put that logic also inside in this handler. We have already extracted out that function, this auth guard function, which checks the authentication of the user. Maybe हम इस तरह की extraction authorization के लिए भी कर सकते हैं, and then we'll use these helper functions inside the code also. So since these are reusable functions, we can now reuse them anywhere. They are
Mm-hmm.
not bound to a middleware only. The only thing they do is they take in a request, check the authorization header. If the token is valid, then they resolve the request. Otherwise, they reject the request. So this particular thing is a reusable functionality now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So do we have any other questions?
No, sir. That's all.
Okay, so let's close the call then. It was nice talking to all of you. We'll meet tomorrow, and tomorrow we'll start implementing the interceptor, and we'll see how the token gets passed to the API, and then we'll also try to work on the interception of these status codes, and then we'll start with the CMS so that we can uh, shorten the time of creating the admin panel. Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah. Thanks.
Bye.